Mandy and Ty lived in one of the city's most prestigious neighborhoods, in a modern house filled with light and laughter. From the outside, everything about them seemed picture perfect. Ty had built a successful career, and Mandy was well known in social circles for her charm and kindness. Together, they had two beautiful daughters who were as admired as their parents, dressed in the best clothes and seen at the most exclusive family events. People whispered about how lucky Mandy and Ty were to have it all: love, beauty, money, and the admiration of their peers. However, underneath this sparkling surface, Mandy sensed a growing distance. Ty, her once devoted husband, had become evasive, with late nights at the office and weekends where he suddenly had urgent matters to attend to. Mandy would stay up late, looking out the window into the darkness, her heart heavy with worry and confusion. She missed the husband who used to hold her hand, who once looked at her like she was the only woman in the world. One evening, after the children had gone to bed, Mandy confronted Ty. She took a deep breath, determined to address what had been eating at her for months. "Ty, I feel like we're living separate lives," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "You're barely here. When was the last time we had a real conversation or a family meal together?" Ty barely looked up from his phone, which he'd taken to obsessively checking lately. "You're overthinking, Mandy. Work's been intense. We're going through an expansion. You know how it is." "No, I don't know how it is, Ty," she said, her voice sharper now. "I just know that you're not the man I married anymore, and I don't understand why." Ty sighed and put his phone down, finally meeting her eyes. For a moment, Mandy thought she saw a flicker of guilt, but it was gone in an instant. "I'm just tired, Mandy. I don't know what else to say," he mumbled, reaching for his phone again. "Can we not do this tonight?" Mandy bit her lip, swallowing down the hurt that clawed at her throat. "Fine," she whispered, barely audible. She turned away, feeling more alone than ever. Deep down inside her, she knew Ty was keeping something from her, and she was determined to find out. The truth, as Ty well knew, was much more complicated than work stress. He had met Petra, Mandy's jeweler, months ago when she'd come by the house with a selection of custom pieces for Mandy's birthday. Petra was glamorous, with an air of mystery and sophistication that Ty found intriguing. Mandy's enthusiasm about the jewelry had been infectious, and Petra's charm filled the room like a lingering perfume. Several weeks later, they crossed paths again, entirely by coincidence. Ty was grabbing a drink at a popular restaurant when he noticed her sitting alone at the bar. "Well, if it isn't the man with impeccable taste," Petra said with a smile, her eyes gleaming. Ty chuckled, feeling flattered. "Petra, right? You sold those beautiful pieces to my wife." She nodded, arching an eyebrow. "Speaking of which, if you're interested, I have a few new items that could make quite a surprise gift for Mandy. Here." She leaned closer, lowering her voice to a playful whisper. "Why don't you give me your number? I'll send you a preview." Caught in her spell, Ty obliged, his heart racing with a thrill he hadn't felt in years. The affair began slowly. Ty would visit Petra's shop under the guise of finding something special for Mandy. Their conversations grew increasingly personal, their meetings lingering long after closing hours. One night, Petra invited him to her home to show him an exclusive collection of rings. But when he arrived, she greeted him with a silk robe and a glass of wine. "Ty," she said softly, resting a hand on his shoulder, "do you ever wonder what it'd be like to escape for just one night?" Ty knew he should have turned around and left immediately, but he didn't. Instead, he found himself lost in her embrace, every consequence blurring in the intoxication of the moment. It was as if he was hypnotized by her charming looks and seduction. As the affair deepened, Petra's control over Ty grew more sinister. She would call him late at night, feigning illness or loneliness. "Ty, please, I need you. My stomach cramps are unbearable," she'd whimper into the phone. Ty, feeling increasingly entangled, would leave Mandy and the children in the middle of the night, each time feeling a deeper pang of guilt that he couldn't quite shake. But Petra's allure was addictive, and soon she began whispering desires of her own. "I want what you have," she confessed one evening, lying beside him. "A real life, a family, with you." Ty's mind churned in turmoil, but Petra's final trump card came one night when she called him in tears. "Ty, I'm pregnant," she said, voice shaking with what sounded like both fear and excitement. Ty's heart skipped a beat, and he struggled to process the news. "A baby? Petra, are you certain?" "Yes, and it's a boy. Ty, your son." Petra's tone shifted, softening as she continued, "I know how much you want a son. You've told me as much. We could have everything together, Ty." The thought consumed him. As the only son in his family, he'd always dreamt of passing down his legacy to a son of his own. Petra was giving him something Mandy couldn't, or so he thought. Back at home, Mandy's suspicions continued to grow. She was haunted by Ty's distance and the growing silence between them. Her once warm, loving husband was now a shadow in their home. She knew something was wrong, and as hard as it was to admit, her mind began to piece together the bitter truth. After sleepless nights, wrestling with her doubts, she hired a private investigator, hoping that by some miracle, her suspicions would be proven wrong. When the investigator presented the findings, Mandy felt her world crash down. Ty was having an affair with Petra, her jeweler, the woman she'd welcomed into their home. She was numb with shock, unable to believe that the life she'd carefully built with Ty was crumbling. But her shock turned to fury, and she decided to confront Petra face to face. When Mandy arrived at Petra's boutique, Petra didn't feign surprise. Instead, she met Mandy's gaze with a smirk, leaning back with a sense of twisted triumph. "I can make Ty happier than you ever did," Petra said coolly, brushing a stray lock of hair back. "And I can give him what you couldn't. I can give him a son." Mandy's hands shook as she clenched her fists. "You've manipulated him, Petra. He has a family, a wife and 2 daughters who adore him." Petra let out a bitter laugh. "Ty made his choice, Mandy. I didn't force him to come to me. He wanted this." With those words ringing in her ears, Mandy left the boutique, each step fueled by a heartbreak she could barely contain. The confrontation with Petra was just the beginning. Mandy took her pain to Ty, laying out every detail of what she knew. Ty, caught in the trap he had spun for himself, had nothing to say in his defense. "I don't even know who you are anymore, Ty," Mandy said through her tears. "I trusted you. I loved you. And you chose this?" Ty, guilt-ridden and unable to meet her gaze, simply said, "I'm sorry, Mandy. I never wanted it to end this way." Without hesitation, Mandy filed for divorce, feeling both empowered and devastated. Ty, sensing his mistake too late, numbly agreed. In just a few short weeks, the life they had built was shattered. But it didn't take long for Ty to see the truth of his actions. A few weeks after the divorce was finalized, Petra tearfully informed him she'd miscarried. For Ty, who had been holding on to the idea of a son, it was a crushing blow. He felt his carefully constructed facade of happiness unraveling. He began missing his daughters, longing for the stability and love he'd once taken for granted. He started visiting Mandy's new home, where the girls were always eager to see him. Over time, Mandy's heart softened, and slowly, they began to rebuild the trust that had once been their foundation. They would sit together, watching the children play, sharing stories of memories they once cherished. Petra, realizing that Ty was slipping away, grew desperate. She tried to pull Ty back in, accusing him of abandoning her after her miscarriage. When even that didn't work, she confronted Mandy in public, rage twisting her face. "You're pathetic, Mandy," she spat. "Ty was mine before you came crawling back, and he'll be mine again." Mandy, now steeled with a newfound confidence, looked her square in the eye. "Funny," she said coldly, "I seem to remember you saying something about giving Ty a son. How did that work out?" Furious, Petra stormed off, determined to win Ty back by any means necessary. Petra found out that Mandy was pregnant for Ty. So, she befriended Mandy's housekeeper, Helen, showering her with gifts and convincing her to help sabotage Mandy's pregnancy. But Helen, loyal to Mandy, revealed the plot, allowing Mandy to pretend she had miscarried. Petra, sensing a moment to strike, confronted Ty with the news of Mandy's miscarriage. "She's just manipulating you, Ty. She never cared about you the way I did," Petra said, smiling triumphantly. But Mandy, who had been listening nearby, stepped forward and revealed the truth. With a recording of Petra's plan to harm her, she exposed Petra's deception in front of Ty. Ty's face fell, his eyes wide with horror. You tried to hurt my wife? My child?" Petra, realizing she'd lost him forever, crumbled in despair. She begged for forgiveness, but Ty was resolute. He looked at Mandy, a woman he now realized he could never replace, and said softly, "I'm so sorry, Mandy." They rebuilt their marriage slowly, with trust and patience. Mandy, in time, gave birth to a son, and Ty held his promise to cherish her and their family. The road to healing was long, but with love, they walked it together, leaving Petra and the darkness she'd brought into their lives firmly in the past. Their lives returned to one of joy, built this time on a foundation tested by betrayal, but ultimately strengthened by resilience and love. As the years passed, Mandy and Ty worked tirelessly to mend the fractures in their relationship. Their home once again became filled with the sound of laughter and love as their daughters flourished, and their newborn son grew into a symbol of their renewed commitment. Ty, who had once been swayed by the allure of Petra's seductive promises, found peace in the simple joy of being with his family. However, the shadow of their past was never far away, and neither Ty nor Mandy could have anticipated the twists their lives were about to take. One cool autumn evening, just as the leaves were beginning to fall, Ty received a letter. It was from Petra. Despite everything that had happened, despite the lies, deceit, and betrayal, she was not finished with him. The letter was brief, but filled with venom. "Ty," it read, "I thought you were different. I thought you'd be the man who could love me unconditionally. But I was wrong. Don't think for a second that I'll let you and Mandy live your little fantasy without consequences. You'll be hearing from me soon, and when you do, you'll wish you had stayed by my side. Yours, Petra." Ty's hand shook as he folded the letter. A cold sweat formed at his temples. He thought he had left Petra behind, that her grip on his life had been severed the day he chose Mandy. But here she was, threatening to return and shatter the peace he had fought so hard to rebuild. He debated whether to tell Mandy, but ultimately decided against it. After all, Petra had lost her hold on him. She was nothing more than a bitter memory now, wasn't she? A month passed without incident, and Ty began to relax. Perhaps Petra had only written out of desperation, one final attempt to regain his attention. But one afternoon, Mandy received a phone call that would plunge her back into the nightmare she thought was over. "Mandy?" The voice on the other end was unfamiliar, cold, and clinical. "This is Dr. Harris from the city hospital. I'm calling because we have a patient here, Petra, and she has listed you as her emergency contact." Mandy nearly dropped the phone. "Petra? My jeweler Petra? Why would she—" "I'm not sure why, ma'am, but she insisted we reach out to you. She's very ill, and we're not certain how much time she has left. She mentioned that there are things she needs to confess, things that involve you and your family." Mandy felt her blood turn to ice. "Confess? What are you talking about?" "I suggest you come down here, ma'am. It's important." Hanging up, Mandy sat in stunned silence. Ty walked in, noticing the pale look on her face. "Mandy, what's wrong?" he asked, concern etched across his features. She looked up at him, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's Petra. She's in the hospital. She says she needs to confess something. Something about us." Ty's face drained of color. "What? That's impossible. She can't still be trying to mess with us after all this time." "She's dying, Ty. This could be serious." After a tense conversation, they both agreed to visit Petra, though Mandy was reluctant. What more could Petra possibly do? What was left to confess? The hospital was sterile and dimly lit, and as they approached Petra's room, the air felt thick with unspoken tension. When they entered, they were greeted by a sight that was both shocking and unsettling. Petra, the once glamorous and seductive woman who had nearly destroyed their marriage, was a shadow of her former self. Her skin was pale, her body frail, and her eyes, once full of life and mischief, now looked haunted. "You came," Petra whispered, her voice weak but laced with something that made Mandy's skin crawl. Mandy crossed her arms, her posture stiff. "What do you want, Petra?" Petra's lips curled into a faint, ghostly smile. "I wanted to see you, both of you, before I leave this world. I've made mistakes, so many mistakes." Ty stood by Mandy's side, his jaw clenched. "You didn't have to drag us into this, Petra. You could have let us live our lives in peace." "Peace?" Petra let out a wheezing laugh, which quickly turned into a cough. "You think I could ever let you go without telling you the truth?" Mandy's patience was thinning. "What truth? What game are you playing this time?" Petra's eyes flickered toward Ty, and then back to Mandy. "The baby," she rasped. "The one I told Ty I lost. The one I said was his. It wasn't his." Mandy's heart skipped a beat, while Ty's expression shifted from anger to confusion. "What?" Ty asked, taking a step closer to Petra. "What do you mean it wasn't mine? You lied about that too." Petra's smile faded, and for the first time since they arrived, genuine remorse flickered across her face. "I wanted you, Ty. I wanted your life, your love, your wealth. And I knew the only way to keep you was to promise you something Mandy couldn't give you. A son." Mandy stood there, frozen in disbelief. "So you lied about the baby?" Petra's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I lied about a lot of things. I thought if I could just hold on to you, everything else would fall into place. But the baby wasn't yours, Ty. I was seeing someone else. Another man. When I lost the baby, I was devastated. But I knew if I told you the truth, you'd leave me for good. So, I kept pretending. Ty shook his head, his hands clenched into fists. Why are you telling us this now? Because I have nothing left to lose, Petra admitted, her voice barely audible. I'm dying, and I don't want to take these lies with me. Mandy looked at Ty, searching his face for his reaction, but he seemed as stunned as she was. The truth was a relief and a burden at the same time. Petra had manipulated them, yes, but now, with her on the verge of death, the anger that had once burned so brightly was slowly being replaced with pity. I don't expect forgiveness, Petra continued, her breath becoming labored. I wanted to tell you the truth, to make sure you knew that I never really had you, Ty. You were always hers. For a long moment, no one spoke. The weight of Petra's confession hung in the air like a storm cloud, ready to burst. Finally, Mandy took a step forward, her voice soft but firm. You were right about one thing, Petra. You never really had him, because even when we were broken, we still had something you never could. Love. With that, Mandy turned and left the room, her heart heavy, but her resolve unshaken. Ty lingered for a moment longer, looking down at the woman who had nearly destroyed everything he cared about. I'm sorry, he whispered, though whether he was apologizing to Petra or to himself, he wasn't sure. As they drove home in silence, Mandy's mind raced. The truth about Petra's lies, the baby, everything. She couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Petra might have confessed, but the chaos she'd sown in their lives still lingered like a dark cloud over their marriage. It would take time for the wounds to fully heal. Several weeks later, as life returned to normal, a new complication emerged. Mandy received a call from her lawyer, informing her that Petra had left something in her will for her. A will? Mandy asked, incredulous. Why would she leave anything for me? I don't know, the lawyer replied, but it's something you'll want to see. Dear amazing viewers, I know that you are wondering what Petra left for Mandy in her will and why she would even leave anything for Mandy. Please keep watching to find out. Before I continue, I would like to ask you to kindly subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed yet. Please click on the subscribe button. Much appreciation. And if you are a returning subscriber, welcome back and thank you so much. Now, back to the story. Reluctantly, Mandy met with her lawyer, dreading what Petra might have left behind. When she was handed a small velvet box, she opened it to find a beautiful diamond necklace, one of the pieces Petra had once tried to sell her. Along with it was a letter. Mandy, the letter began, this is for you, a reminder of the life I tried to take from you. I failed, but I hope you'll take this as a symbol that I'm leaving your life for good. I'm sorry for everything. Mandy closed the box, a bitter smile on her lips. Petra's parting gift was a strange one, a token of both guilt and surrender. It was over, truly over. But just as Mandy and Ty began to move forward again, a knock on the door, one rainy evening, shattered the peace they had been rebuilding. Standing on the porch was a stranger, a man, tall and well-dressed, with piercing eyes and a grim expression. Can I help you? Ty asked, stepping forward. The man cleared his throat. I'm here about Petra, he said, his voice low and foreboding. There are some things you need to know about her, things that didn't die with her. Mandy's heart raced as she exchanged a nervous glance with Ty. What things? She asked. The man hesitated for a moment before answering, "Petra had more secrets than you realize, and they're about to become your problem." As lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating the stranger's face, Mandy and Ty felt the ground shift beneath them. Just when they thought they had escaped Petra's web, they were about to be pulled back in, deeper than they ever imagined. The stranger's words hung in the air, casting an ominous chill over the room as Mandy and Ty exchanged worried glances. The man, sensing their tension, took a deliberate step forward. "My name is Victor," he said, his gaze steady. "I was Petra's brother." Mandy felt a knot form in her stomach. She had never heard Petra mention a brother, let alone family. Petra had always presented herself as independent, a lone wolf who needed no one but herself. Yet here stood Victor, his face a blend of bitterness and sorrow. "What do you want from us?" Ty asked, his voice low and guarded. Victor hesitated, looking down as if trying to piece together the right words. Petra left something behind, and it wasn't just jewelry or trinkets. He took a deep breath. She was in over her head with some very dangerous people. People who don't just forget unpaid debts. "What kind of debts?" Mandy asked, feeling her pulse quicken. Victor's face tightened. "Financial, but more than that, personal. She was involved in schemes you wouldn't believe, manipulating wealthy men, taking their money, ruining their lives. And now that she's gone, those people think her closest connections should pay her dues." Mandy's hands grew cold as the weight of Victor's words sank in. "But we weren't close to her. In fact, she tried to destroy our family." "That doesn't matter to these people," Victor said, shaking his head. "To them, it's all about who was connected to her. They believe that because she left things to you in her will, you must have been close. Her debts, in their minds, are now yours to bear." Ty clenched his fists, his jaw tightening. "Are you saying they'll come after us? Our family?" Victor nodded solemnly. "I've seen what these people can do. They're relentless. Petra got involved with powerful individuals in the black market, laundering money through her jewelry business and acquiring large sums from people like you." Mandy felt a shiver run down her spine as her mind flashed back to Petra's luxurious boutique. The pristine cases, filled with glittering diamonds and precious stones. Had all of it been part of some sinister scheme? Ty's eyes darkened. "Why didn't you stop her?" Victor's face fell, his shoulders sagging. "I tried. Believe me, I tried. Petra was always persuasive, manipulative. I lost count of the times I warned her, but she was obsessed with this life, this image she crafted for herself. And now, it's left all of us, including me and you, at risk." Mandy stepped forward, her voice trembling. "So, what are we supposed to do, Victor? You're telling us we have dangerous people coming after us, and that we're supposed to just sit here and wait?" Victor looked away, his expression tormented. "No, there's one person who might be able to help you. Someone who's dealt with these people before. He's unconventional, but he might be your best chance at getting these people off your backs. I can take you to him." That night, Mandy and Ty followed Victor across town, their minds reeling from the revelations they had just uncovered. They stopped at an unmarked door in a part of the city they'd never visited, a stark contrast to the pristine neighborhoods they knew. Victor knocked in a distinct rhythm, and after a few tense moments, the door creaked open to reveal a dimly lit room filled with cigar smoke and shadows. A man sat at a small table in the center, his face hidden beneath the brim of a fedora. He was dressed in a suit that looked like it hadn't changed with the times, his fingers adorned with large, gaudy rings. When he looked up, his piercing eyes met Mandy's, and she felt a jolt of fear. "So, you're Petra's legacy," he said with a smirk, his voice deep and smooth. "Victor tells me you're in a bit of a situation." Ty stepped protectively in front of Mandy. "We don't want any trouble. We just want these people to leave us alone." The man let out a dark chuckle, leaning back in his chair. "Wanting trouble or not, trouble has a way of finding you when Petra's involved. She was, well, let's just say she was as talented at making enemies as she was at charming fools." Mandy felt a flash of anger. "We're not fools. We had no idea about her schemes." The man raised an eyebrow, seemingly amused. "And yet, here you are, dragged into her mess. It's a shame, really. Petra was a complicated woman, but she had a way of making others clean up after her." Ty's patience was wearing thin. "Can you help us or not?" The man leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "I can, but it won't come cheap. You'll need to cut ties with every single piece of Petra's life, every gift, every ounce of jewelry, anything she ever touched or gave you. These people, they can track anything connected to her, and that includes what she's left with you." Mandy thought of the necklace she'd received in Petra's will, the same piece she'd left untouched in her jewelry drawer, fearing it was cursed. "So, we get rid of it all?" "Not just that," the man replied. "You'll need to go silent. These people will be watching. Any sign that you're reaching out, asking too many questions, and they'll know you're trying to cover your tracks. I can give you a place to stay, hidden from their view, but it'll cost you." Victor looked at Mandy and Ty, his eyes filled with a mixture of guilt and resolve. "I'll cover it," he said quietly. "Petra may have been my sister, but she had a family of her own that she tore apart. The least I can do is make this right." Within hours, Mandy, Ty, and their children were whisked away to an isolated cabin in the mountains, a place where cell signals were weak and privacy was paramount. Days turned into weeks as they lived in a state of enforced isolation, constantly looking over their shoulders. Mandy would stand at the window at night, watching the dark, endless forest that surrounded them, listening for any sound that might signal someone approaching. Ty, who had once been the picture of composure, now paced restlessly, haunted by the decisions that had led them to this point. One night, as they lay awake, Mandy finally spoke the words that had been sitting heavy in her heart. "Ty, do you regret it? Everything with Petra?" Ty was silent for a long time before he answered. "Every day, Mandy. Every day I think about what I did, how I risked everything, our family, our life together, for something that wasn't real. Petra was a fantasy, a beautiful lie. But you're my reality, and I'll spend every day of my life making this up to you if it's the last thing I do." Mandy reached over, taking his hand. Despite everything, despite the betrayal and the chaos, she felt a glimmer of hope. "Then let's make sure we get back to that life, Ty. No more secrets, no more lies." But just as they began to settle into their new normal, the quiet they had become accustomed to was shattered. Late one night, there was a loud knock on the cabin door. Ty jumped to his feet, his heart pounding as he grabbed the fireplace poker. Mandy clutched their son close, her heart racing as she watched the door. "Who is it?" Ty called out, his voice trembling. There was a long pause before the voice on the other side replied, "It's Victor. Open up." Ty let out a sigh of relief and opened the door, but the look on Victor's face brought the fear rushing back. He looked shaken, his clothes rumpled, and his face pale. "Victor, what's going on?" Mandy asked, her voice urgent. Victor stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "They know. The people Petra owed, they know you're here. I tried to throw them off, but they found out." Mandy's stomach dropped. "What does that mean? Are we in danger?" Victor nodded grimly. "I'm afraid so. They're on their way, and they're not coming to negotiate." Ty clenched his fists, his voice firm. "Then we leave, right now." Victor shook his head. "There's no time. We'll have to fight our way out if they reach us." Mandy's heart pounded as Ty took her hand, looking into her eyes with a determination she hadn't seen in a long time. "We're going to get through this," he whispered. As they gathered the children and prepared to make their stand, Mandy's mind raced with thoughts of Petra, the woman who had brought so much chaos into their lives, whose lies and manipulation had pushed them to the edge. But in that moment, as Ty held her close, she felt a renewed sense of purpose, a determination to protect the family they had built. The cabin lights flickered as footsteps crunched outside, the menacing shadows drawing closer. And as Mandy prepared for the unknown, she knew one thing for certain. This was the final chapter in Petra's twisted legacy, and whatever happened, they would face it together. The footsteps outside grew louder, each one sounding like the beat of a countdown, a reminder that Petra's shadow still lingered long after her death. Mandy tightened her grip on Ty's hand, her heart racing. This was it, the last fight, the moment where they would either reclaim their peace or be consumed by the chaos Petra had left behind. Victor stepped forward, his face resolute. "I'll go outside and try to reason with them. Maybe I can convince them that there's nothing left to gain here." "No, Victor," Ty interjected, shaking his head. "They won't just listen to reason. These are people who only understand power and fear." Victor's face was tense, but he gave a slight nod. "Then we hold our ground. They don't know about the back entrance. Mandy, take the kids and go. Ty and I will stall them." Mandy looked at Ty, her eyes filled with both fear and love. "I'm not leaving without you." Ty held her face gently, his own eyes soft with determination. "Mandy, please, you have to get the kids to safety. We'll catch up, I promise." She hesitated, her heart battling between her need to stay and protect her family and her instinct to keep her children safe. But with a final nod, she whispered, "Be careful, both of you." Quickly, she gathered her children, and with one last glance back at Ty, slipped out the back, moving quietly through the trees. The air was crisp, and every rustle of leaves seemed deafening in the silence of the forest. She carried her son close to her chest and held her daughter's hands tightly, whispering words of comfort as they moved further into the woods. Back in the cabin, Ty and Victor waited. They could hear murmurs and footsteps just beyond the front door. Finally, there was a sharp knock, and Ty exchanged a glance with Victor before calling out, "What do you want? There's nothing for you here." The voice on the other side was cold, calculating. "We're here for Petra's debts. She may be gone, but her promises aren't. If she owed us, then you owe us." Victor stepped forward, his voice firm. "Petra deceived all of us. She used everyone in her life to get what she wanted. But there's no debt to collect here." A tense silence followed, and then the front door burst open. A group of men entered, their expressions hardened and their movements predatory. Ty and Victor backed up, holding their ground as best they could. One of the men, taller and more menacing than the others, sneered. "You think you can talk your way out of this? Petra wasn't the first to try to fool us, and she won't be the last. Her family will pay what she owed." Tai stepped forward, his voice unwavering. "We aren't paying anything. We're done with Petra, and you need to be too." The man laughed coldly. "You don't get to decide when it's over." But before any of them could react, the lights flickered, and the sound of a vehicle approaching made everyone freeze. Bright headlights shone through the windows, illuminating the room in a harsh glare. The men turned, momentarily disoriented as the sound of sirens filled the air. Suddenly, armed officers stormed in, their guns raised. "This is the police. Everyone down on the ground." Tai and Victor raised their hands, relief flooding over them as they realized help had finally arrived. The men who had come for Petra's debts dropped to their knees, realizing they were outnumbered and outmatched. Mandy's lawyer had somehow tracked them down after their disappearance, leading the authorities to their hidden cabin. Once the chaos had died down, Tai and Mandy were reunited, holding each other tightly as relief washed over them. For the first time in months, they could finally breathe without fear, without the weight of Petra's schemes looming over them. As they walked with the children through the forest, back to a world where safety and stability awaited, Mandy felt a deep sense of closure. The nightmare was finally over. They had survived Petra's twisted legacy, and though scars remained, they had emerged stronger for it. In the weeks that followed, Mandy and Tai returned home with a renewed commitment to their life together. They sold every trace of jewelry Petra had ever touched, every reminder of her presence purged from their lives. Their family became closer, their love deeper, and their focus firmly on the future. One evening, as they watched their children playing in the yard, Tai took Mandy's hand and whispered, "Thank you for giving me a second chance. I'll never let anyone come between us again." Mandy looked at him, her heart full of forgiveness and hope. "We survived because we chose each other in the end, Tai. That's what matters." With a peaceful smile, she rested her head on his shoulder, knowing that, at last, they had reclaimed their lives. This time, it was for good. Together, they turned their backs on the past and stepped forward into a life filled with the quiet strength of love that had weathered even the darkest storms. Before you watch the next video, kindly subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed yet. Please click on the subscribe button and like this video. Be a part of my channel's growth by clicking on the next video on the screen and drop a comment to let me know what you think about the story. Thank you for watching. Much appreciation.